Okay, for number 58, they've said we can translate to an equation or a proportion and then solve it. I'll translate to an equation. That tends to be the method I prefer, and I'll also solve it by writing it as a proportion. So you'll see both methods. Okay. First, direct translation into an equation. For what number? Probably not much of a surprise there. The word is pretty dependably represents the equal sign, especially if you're referring to these short percent sentences. Okay, these you can kind of learn to translate directly. All right, 20% can be written two different ways. I could write, well, let me say three ways at least. I could write 20%, but you can't really do a calculation with your percent sign in tow. So I'm going to say for 20%, usually you'll just change this to decimal form. So if you get rid of the percent sign, the decimal goes away 2 spaces. So you end up with just 0.2. Okay, so I've rewritten 20% as 2/10. By the way, you can also write this as 20 over 100. That's the same as 20%, and this would reduce to 1/5. So instead of 2/10, I could write 1/5. In general, I'll use the decimal form, so that's how I'll complete this. And then of 36, that just means times 36. Okay, so we've translated this sentence to an equation, and x, in this case, x is already all by itself, so all we have to do is multiply here. And it turns out that x is equal, 2 times 36 is 72 with 1 decimal space, so 7 2/10. All right, so 7 2/10 is 20% of 36. Make that 7 a little longer. Strange looking 7. Okay. Essentially, there are 3 types of these sentences, even though the wording can be rearranged in more than 3 ways, but there's 3 basic things that happen. Okay, so well, I guess I'll solve this one as a proportion also now. Okay, if I'm going to use proportion method, I will follow the pattern. I'll put it right here. I'm going to follow the pattern is over of equals the percentage over 100. And these I just take the value that's close to one of these words. And sometimes that can be a little confusing, but I'll try to illustrate that when we get to an example that does show that. Okay, usually the percentage is the easiest one to fill in. So I'm going to slide this up some, and alright, I'll be filling in these positions here. The 100 is always going to sit there. Alright, so there's no mystery on that account. And let's see, we have 20%. Alright, that's 20 over 100. So if you use the proportion method, you do end up, oh sorry, I'm not showing it. You do end up writing it in this form, okay? But anyway, following this proportion method, you have 20 over 100, and then for the word of, that is right next to our number 36. And notice they said what number is, so our x will sit there. Okay, and now you have a proportion that you solve. The book and many textbooks, not just the one that we're using here, often says use cross products to solve for x. I really don't like using cross products. It works nicely, but I want you to really understand the algebra involved. So I'm just going to say I want x by itself. I want to get rid of that 36. It's held there by division. The opposite operation is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply by 36 and multiply by 36. These cancel. That's really a 36 over a 1, right? So I can cancel like that. And over here, let's do some reducing. Go this way. 20 goes into 20 once. 20 goes into 100 5 times. I guess I'll put my 5 here. So I have 36 over 5. Slide this up a little. So right now on this side I just have x. Over here I have 36 fifths. But if I divide 5 into 36, 36 divided by 5 I would either get 7 1/5 or 7 2/10. So 7 1/5 or 7 2/10. Alright, so I hope you see you get to the same place, and you can either write your answer as a mixed number. I would actually accept an improper fraction, that's fine with me, or decimal. Any of these three is a perfectly fine way to answer the question. They're all the same value. Alright, so that takes care of number 58. And we will look at number 60. Let's get this in here. Okay, and again I'll start out using the equation method and then I'll show proportion. And what percent, I'm going to fudge a little bit on this. Technically, for what percent, I really should put, guess I'll slide it down. For what percent, okay, for this guy right here. I really should put x over 100, or another way to write 1/100th of x is 0.01 x. Alright, these are accurate ways of saying what percent, but I have a feeling it just intimidates students a little too much. So I'm just going to put x, but you have to remember at the end to come back and change your value to a percent. Okay, so I'm fudging a little bit by just putting an x there. And then of 130, of 130 means times 130. So if I just put 130 right here, variable next to a number means to multiply. If you want to put a dot there to reinforce it, that's fine. Is, pretty dependably, means you have equal sign. And then the 32.5 shouldn't be much mystery there. Just drops down. Okay, well now we solve for x. And just in case, well, I'm going to solve it from here. This x times 130 is usually written, I'll write it this in a more common way. You would usually see 130x equals 32.5. And how would you get x by itself? You would divide each side by 130. Okay? Well, I'm just going to go from here and do that. So I'm going to divide by 130 and divide by 130. Over here they canceled out, as they always do. So I have x equals, and how to approach this? I could just perform the division. It's probably the best way to go. I don't know. The other possibility would be to get this decimal out of the numerator. I could multiply by 10 and multiply by 10. I think I'll end up just doing the division, but so let's do the division over here. Okay, if you have a decimal here, you have to tell the world. 130 goes into 325. That'll go in at least twice. So there's 260. $65 left over, and of course you can add all the zeros you like here. Alright, I didn't change the value of 32.5. I just stuck a bunch of zeros on the end. So into 650, 5 times would be 500, and then 5 times 50 would be 150, so that would be 650. Alright, so we found that x is equal to 25 hundredths, but remember I have to change it to a percent. I didn't take care of that in setting it up. So if I'm going to put in a percent sign, I have to move the decimal 2 places towards it. So you end up with 25%. Maybe I'll eke out a spot here and show how to do this, how to write it efficiently. I just want to show that I also could have just multiplied times 10 and times 10. I could multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10. That'll get rid of our decimal. So that would give us 325 over 1,000. And this would keep simplifying. I could do long division. I could keep simplifying. But one way or another, I'm going to end up with 25 hundredths, and then I'll have to change it to a percent. Alright, let's just leave it as how we did do it. And then to solve this as a proportion, remember we're going to follow the pattern. We'll go proportion over here. We'll be following the pattern is over of equals the percentage over 100. And usually the percentage is the easier one to put in there. And notice here it says what percent. So this is our x over 100. Okay. So if you use the proportion method, you actually do take care of the percentage in setting it up. In fact, of the 3 type of percent sentences that there are, the question that says what percent, I actually like to use the proportion method because it takes care of moving the decimal. All I have to do is remember to put in a percent sign at the end. Okay? And now we're going to follow this pattern is over of. And for is, notice, I already have a blue box around here, but if you were trying to pick out which number applies to the word is, it wouldn't be clear immediately because there's a number on each side of it. But if I pick 130 as the number to go up here, corresponding to is, the word of won't have a number next to it. Okay, so by process of elimination, of is teamed up with the 130, and is linked to the 32.5. So for of, we have our 130. And again, cross products will tell you to multiply across the equal sign, which I don't like to even say that, but it works. I'm just going to encourage you, let me slide this up some. Just basically I want you to learn to solve algebraic equations. This is an algebraic equation. And to get x by itself, I need to get rid of 100. That 100 is held there by division, so I'll use multiplication. And I'll multiply, darn it, I don't like this line here, I just want to show it. So if I multiply one side by 100, I have to come over here and multiply the other side by 100. And then notice how quickly this can clean up. I'll divide by 10 and divide by 10. Okay. 10 times 32.5 is 325 over 13. And I'm going to have to do some division here, okay? On the right hand side, this is 100 over 1, so the hundreds cancel, so you have equals x, alright? I am going to need to put in a percent sign, but I'll do that when I actually have my answer. So, where are we going to do our work? Let me slide this over some. I have 325 divided by 13. It goes in twice. Bring down your 5, and again it's going to go in 5 times because 5 times 10 is 50. 5 times 3 is 15, so that's 5 times. And you have to remember to put in your percent sign. Again, notice I didn't have to move a decimal. I just put in the percent sign because way back here in the setup I already took care of the position of the decimal by putting this 100 right here. So notice you do get the same answer either way. Okay? And we're going to do one more. As I said, there's 3 types of these percent problems. So we'll take a look at number 61. First I'll solve it as an equation and then as a proportion. So this 0.4, there shouldn't be much mystery there. I'm just going to have 0.4, 4/10, is, again, pretty dependably corresponds to the equal sign. 5%, I could write 5% as, I guess I'll put it up here. I could write 5% as 5 over 100, which would reduce to 1/20th. Or I could move the decimal. If you get rid of the percent sign, the decimal goes away 2 places. So either one of these 3, any one of these 3 means the same thing as 5%. Okay, I would choose either this or this for solving it since we already have a decimal here. 0.05 is the winner. Okay, and then of what number? That's just going to mean times x. Okay, times some number. All right, so now to solve for x, you need to get rid of your 0.05. It's held there by multiplication, so we'll use division. And you have to do the same thing to each side. Alright, those cancel. You're left with x equals, and then you'll have to do a little division here, okay? So we'll solve that. Maybe I can do that down here. So we have 4/10 divided by 5/100, and you need to move your decimal twice to keep things balanced. You have to move this one twice. Tell the world. Put in your 0. And 5 goes into 40 8 times with nothing left over. So 4/10 is 5% of 8. All right. Now if we are to use the proportion method, and again we'll be following is over of equals percent over 100. The book uses part. No, they don't use part over whole. They use base. I think they use base over amount. Base is under amount. Let's say it this way: amount over base, percent over 100. So again, the book says amount on top and base. Pretty sure those are the terms they use. I like this method, so whatever it is, base would certainly be a denominator, so it would be amount over base is percent over 100. Alright, so just using these though, is over of. Is sandwiched between two numbers, but I'm certainly not going to make it the percentage, okay? So 5%. Oh, you know what? I should put in my 100 before I even start because I know it's going there. Okay, it's always going to sit there. So this is 5 over 100. Alright, notice it's one of the three options we had anyway. But if we're following this pattern, it's definitely going to be that, at least to start. 4/10 is next to the is. Alright. And then of has of what number, so that's where the x is going to sit. Okay. These are a little trickier when x is in the denominator. It's good if you just learn how to take care of that problem, because whenever it crops up, it causes trouble. I can't get x by itself if it's trapped down in the denominator. So I don't want it there. I want to get rid of the x in this case. So it's held there by division. I'll use the opposite operation, multiplication. So I multiply each side by x. And as is usually the case, this cleans up very quickly. I'm left with 4/10 is equal to 5/100. Let's reduce that to 1/20. And the x just comes down. Now I want x by itself. Means I want to get rid of 1/20. I have to slide this up. It's held there by multiplication, so the opposite is division. When you divide by a fraction, you flip it and multiply. So I multiply by 20 over 1. Multiplied by 20 over 1. You can think of this as over 1. Over here, things certainly cleared up quickly. And I have x equals. Notice here my denominators are 1. I'm just going to ignore them. So I have 20 times 4/10. This would give me 80, but I have one decimal place, so you'd move the decimal in one, so you end up with 8. Okay, either way you're going to get to the same place. As far as multiplying by decimal, we've covered that, so hopefully you're comfortable.